For 45 years, Frank Warren has dedicated his life to the sport of boxing, from the small halls of London to the grandest stages in the world.
Never seen a fight like this in the featherweight division on this level.
10-0, Queensberry.
New York, Vegas, Wembley, Riyadh, he's been all over, and he's worked with so many fighters over the years. Frank Bruno to Prince Naseem Hamed.
Down goes Kelly again. Naseem Hamed knocked out Kevin Kelly.
Tyson Fury.
7, 8, 9. Can you continue?
All over now. Will be now. But surely it's going to be the end of the fight.
Daniel Dubois.
It's over. There's no way back from this, surely.
Joe Calzaghe.
The left hook on the deck.
Super middleweight champion of the world.
Ricky Hatton.
Constantine's corner said no more, and Ricky Hatton has done it.
He's even had Big George Foreman over, and Mike Tyson.
It's like a kick from a horse. And
Today, I sat down with the gaffer, and we just had a little look behind the curtain as to what the last 45 years has been like. The man himself, Mr. Frank, how are you, sir?
I'm good, young man. How are you doing?
I'm very, very good. Now, if I just say to you 45 years,
Yep.
what starts going through your mind that you've been promoting for 45 years?
Well, I've been promoting for 48 years, but with the Boxing Board of Control, I've been doing it for 45 years. And what goes through my mind? Where's all that time gone? It's flown by.
Where has it gone? I mean, it's remarkable.
Ain't going to get it back. It's gone, mate. It just flies by, and time flies when you're enjoying yourself.
Did you think that it would last this long when you first got into it?
I've got to be honest, I don't even think about things like that. I just get on with it and take each day as it comes. I've never thought, oh, what am I going to be doing in 45 years? I mean, that's never even, wouldn't occur to me to think that way. I just think in the moment.
And you live for the moment, essentially.
Yeah, live for the moment. And I suppose to a certain extent, there is some of the future where it's boxers, you're looking at the next move and so forth. But from my perspective, for me, I just think about getting on with what's happening.
Was there a moment during your career where certainly early on, where you thought, this is it now? This is me. I've made it. I'm gonna be doing boxing for the rest of my life. Was there a?
No. I got into it by accident in what they called unlicensed, which meant they weren't licensed by the Boxing Board of Control back then. I got invited to take a license out 45 years ago, and that was it. And it was always a challenge from the start. In those days, there was only one TV company showing boxing. That was BBC Television, which they showed recorded highlights of fights. There was no live boxing. ITV had got involved, dipped their toe in the water, but bailed out of it, and then were bringing in fights from overseas, from Vegas, but showing them most of the time 2 days later. And that was it. I got my license, and in a very short space of time, I got a TV deal. I got my first fight on BBC, who the cartel, which was Mickey Duff, Terry Lawless, Mike Barrett and Harry Levine. They had a monopoly on all the venues in London. They had exclusive contracts with Royal Albert Hall. Jarvis sat on the board of Wembley, and he was, I think, at one stage was the chairman, so you couldn't book Wembley
So you'd be locked out, essentially.
And there was nothing else. There was no O2 Arena. There wasn't no London Arena, which I built in the 80s. Nothing there. And I couldn't even book York Hall. They had the exclusive on York Hall. So you had to be creative, putting shows on in ballrooms, in circus tents, and just trying being creative. And it was a bit of a challenge. But I was young, and always been up for a challenge and up for a fight. So I got on with it, and that's what I did. I signed fighters up. I got a TV deal. So the first fight I put on television was a purse bid I won when I bid against the cartel, and it was Clinton McKenzie against Steve Early. And I tried to do the deal voluntarily with the fighters, but they were terrified of, their managers were terrified of doing a deal with me, even though I was offering really good money. And it went to purse bids. I got Clinton McKenzie to go to purse bid. I said, whatever you do, don't sign a deal, tell him you want to go to purse bid, and I promise you'll get more money, which he did. I won the purse bid. And then then I approached BBC, who were the only people showing domestic boxing, boxing, and they messed me about something rotten. I could only get a venue on I think it was on a Monday night, and I got in touch with them, and they said, because they used to show fights from Wembley and the Albert Hall. On a Tuesday, they used to take place, and they would show them the following night on a programme called Sports Night.
Right. Yeah.
And then they would show the highlights again on Grandstand on Saturday. So they're showing them recorded. But they said to me, I told them the date, the Monday, and they said that they couldn't do the fight because it had been too old by then. It's just nonsense. So I had to think what I was going to do, and I had a thought, and I knew how I had to play it. And I remember ringing up Jonathan Martin, who was the boss back then, and I said to him, if I can get a date within a day, will you do it? He said, yes. I said, I'm struggling. I can't get one. Would you do it if I can? I went back to him, and I said to him, and I'd already spoken to the venue. I knew where I was. And I said to him, I can only get to Thursday. Saying, oh, we can't do that. I said, I just can't get anything else. And he said, well, if you could have got, I said, bloody hell. So I tried for the Friday. He said, well, if you'd have got that, we'd have done it. So, I don't know. So I put the phone down. I already had the Friday.
Right,
so I'll give it about 10 minutes. I rang him back. I said, I've got the Friday.
Well done. Yeah.
And he couldn't get out of it. So then they tried to screw me with the money they wanted to pay me. They were paying in those days sort of like 80 grand a show. It was a lot of money back then. And the fighters weren't getting, it's like pennies they were getting compared with a rights fee. We'd done the deal, and all he'd paid me was $3.5 grand.
That's what you got out of that?
That's what I got. But I thought, I've got to do it.
Yeah.
So I've done it. I'm going to do my dough. I knew I was going to lose money. And I did, but I put advertising on the corner post.
So this was new?
There was never any advertising. They actually pulled a fight with John Conti's fight when there was some advertising on his shorts. They didn't show it.
Why?
So,
Why was this?
Because in those days it wasn't allowed. That was the rules. But I put the advertising on the corner post, so I got a few quid for that. Not a lot, but I'm opening the door for for another income stream. And anyway, I got the fight on. It was on, and that was the only fight I ever done on BBC.
Right. Okay. Wow.
And then it was a good thing I did it though. So within a very short space of time, I met Bob Burrows, late Bob Burrows, who's a good mate of mine, who became a good mate of mine, who was head of Thames TV. In those days, ITV was all different regions. Yeah. So we agreed that we were going to do some boxing. And simultaneously, Joe Bugner said he wanted to come back. He contacted me. Everybody said I was mad, don't bring him back, no one was interested. But I just had this feeling, and I did it. And I did a deal with Joe, came back. The airport was full of photographers, and it got a real massive welcome. And that was my first show on ITV.
No, that's amazing. And that wouldn't have happened unless you kind of bet on yourself with the BBC gig beforehand, essentially doing your dough on that.
Well, I'd done my dough on the very first fight I did, because I went through all the TV nonsense with that, because the Border Control had a regulation, no live TV dates unless you run a certain amount of shows. Sorry, no TV dates, not live, no TV dates unless you run a certain amount of shows. And I got American TV wanted to do this fight. It was two American fighters. I was going to put them on at the Bloomsbury Crest Hotel in their ballroom, and it was all good to go, and the ball knocked it back. So, but I learnt on the job. I thought, okay, they're the rules. I was very good at, when I was on the other side of the, outside of the boxing Border Control fighting, I was winning all the battles. Then I got in there and they were doing me with the rules. So I sat down with a rule book and I studied it, and that's how, and I would use the rule book to my advantage as well and against them. And then I wanted to do a show with live boxing. There's a young boxer called Keith Wallace, late Keith Wallace, great little flyweight. I wanted to go live. ITV wanted to go live, and they wouldn't let me do it. They said no, and I said, well, I'm doing it. And I said, if you stop me, I'll sue you. And it got right. So they said they'll withdraw their officials, and that was on the afternoon of the fight. And in those days, you had telexes. Okay, and I was in my lawyer's office, and they was talking to the board. Paul's lawyer, and he was really good, Oscar Buselink, late Oscar Buselink, and he just said to him, if you do not confirm within 15 minutes that these officials are going to be there and this can go on, he said, you'll be sued for every penny that Mr. Warren will lose.
So this went right to the wire? Right to the wire.
And on the night, right tonight, it's 5 o'clock at night, they said they relented. And that was the start of live TV. And live TV, because they were worried that in their mind, you got to remember, it was nice, and they never had to make any decisions back then. They had the cartel, and that was it. BBC, there was no one in there. They didn't have to There's no sides or anything. It was just that. And the excuse was, or the reason was because if you had it live on TV, people wouldn't buy tickets. And I didn't subscribe to that. And in fact, I felt that it'd help, and it's live boxing. You know, nothing better than live sport, is there? You don't want to watch recording. Don't tell me the score. Don't tell me the result. I want to wait 24 hours. You know, come on.
You just couldn't.
You want to see it.
Yeah.
And that's where the excitement was, and that's what happened.
It's almost like the Saturday 3 p.m. argument, isn't it? That's why they don't televise them, because no one would go. But so the sport has changed so much then in 45, 48 years. Like,
yeah, music, all the fanfare. In, you know, for a big fight, they'd have a fanfare. They, you know, maybe an old scratchy record, or they would have trumpeters come in and play a fanfare.
Right.
So
Is this for someone's ring entrance,
yeah.
or?
And then they would glove up in the ring. But because we now are on live TV, we had to, you know, time's precious. Glove up in the dressing rooms. Fighters are warm. They're all warmed up, ready to go. Loud music, you know, because I mean, I had nightclubs before that and whatever, so I was quite into music and things. And I'd pick all the music what went on, and we'd put the music on. And I can remember Ray Clark, who was late. He was a good bloke, actually. I got on well with him at the end. But he was the general secretary. I remember sitting at ringside all these years.
Never seen nor heard anything like it.
When I try to do an interview and all the music going on, whatever, and I can't hear I can't hear what somebody's asking me.
These are remarkable changes, though, because like I would take that for granted. Of course, there's going to be music at the show. Of course, there's going to be sponsorship on the ring aprons, ring card girls, etc.
No canvas advertising, nothing. There was nothing.
And it is.
No round card, as you say, nothing.
But is that because of a lack of sort of vision at
No,
the
it
time?
just didn't happen. It's not vision or anything. It just didn't happen. And I did that unlicensed shows. On the unlicensed shows, we did all that. So just basically took that across, and it was good with some boxers, because you know, you'd pick something from which become their theme song, and then obviously, you know, everybody started to do it. But you know, working against the cartel was really hard work. I mean, they were not, you know, they behind the scenes, they really give it to us, and it's what, you know, and you had to really stand firm with them and fight them, and that's what I did.
Where did that resolve come from then? Because that sounds like because you were a young man as well, right? That's a very intimidating environment to go into against the establishment and be sort of on your own.
Yeah, I was in my 20s. I was in my 20s, so I was young, but I've always stood my ground. Whatever I'm doing, I'm on it, and I'll do it. And I don't want to take liberties with anybody, but no one's going to take liberties with me.
Has that been the biggest challenge, do you think, in your kind of boxing career? That initial breakthrough?
Yeah, I think you've got to start somewhere, haven't you? You have to start somewhere, and that was the start. I mean, it's like everything. Nothing comes easy. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And it was tough times, and what was tough was fighters, because all the big name fighters were all with the cartel. And if you didn't box for the cartel, you didn't get on television. So, you know, I was up against that, but I signed up quite a few amateurs, good amateurs. And I was only a couple of years older than some of them. I mean, Joe Bugner was he's late Joe now as he is now. He was older than me.
Yeah, but you've always had the eye for the talent. So whilst the
but you learn, you know. I mean, I'm sports nuts. I'm absolutely always been sports nut and boxing. You know, I had a couple of second cousins were boxers, family members were boxers. You know, professionals, you know, amateurs and all that sort of stuff. But I've always been really into it, and Ernie Fossey worked with me from day one. Ernie Fossey was a really good bloke, knew his boxing, ex-fighter, but great cornerman, great cutman, probably the best cut man out of all of them. And really, you know, old school, didn't stand no nonsense. And I worked the corners. I mean, I worked Joe Bugner's corner, I worked Keith Wallace's corner, I worked all my fighters' corners. I spend a lot of my time in the gym. I don't do that now because I just don't get the time. But I was in the gyms all the time. I was in the gyms because a lot of the what they called the unlicensed fighters, and I formed my own governing body called National Boxing Council, but all those fighters trained in professional gyms, in gyms where professional boxers were. So I'd be up there, I'd be watching, looking at other trainers and watching the fighters, and you know, and you pick it. If you've got any brains, you pick some of it up. What happens today? None of them go in the gym. They say they go in there, but I know they don't. I listen to some of them. They don't know what they're talking about. It was an education, and it was an education working with those guys and working with Ernie, and without their knowledge and so forth. And I suppose, you know, you've got their knowledge, and I think that, you know, my sort of knowledge and some of the things that I do in my acumen, if whatever you want to call it, and it worked.
Where did your sort of fighting knowledge come from? Because for you to take a role in the corner of a fighter, like, for example, I don't think Eddie Hearn could do that. I'm not sure that he's positioned to do that. But you were clearly comfortable at a young age, not being a fighter yourself, right? But taking a position in the corner. What was your role there, and how much could you give a fighter there?
I weren't the lead second. I was working with Ernie.
You're part
I was working with Ernie. My brother Robert as well. Worked there as well. We just did, we did it and we picked it up, and you learn. If you've got any brains, you learn. There's some people you can put them in a corner and they won't know nothing if they stayed in a corner for 100 years. And there's some people who, I've sat next to people and I'm listening to them and I'm thinking, what are they on about?
That's still in you now. Like, we see you sometimes go over to a fighter's corner. Oh, come on, use your jab.
That's what I think.
Frank Warren is screaming at Hamza Shiraz to throw the uppercut.
And let's get it right. I've been there, as I say, it's 48 years. I don't know now. I'm never going to know. I'm not saying I know everything, but I know I'm not a bad judge of fighters. I'm not so much now, but I was a manager as well. I think I've managed more champions than any other British manager. And I think I've promoted now more world title fights or more title fights than any British promoter.
So it hasn't gone too bad then, has it? The last 48, 45 years.
No, it's been ups and downs. Listen, I've had my back to the wall financially a few times. I'm not going to make any say I haven't, but had the self-belief and the wherewithal to come through it.
Yeah, the resilience is one that I think you'll be remembered for sort of 50, 100 years from now. It will be the resilience.
Yeah, but that's it. But good fighters have resilience, don't they? All the good fighters, they've got it in them.
Prince Naseem Hamed. Now, when I look back when I was younger, sort of growing up, that would be the guy that I'd be like, wow, he's amazing. I'd see you by his side. That felt like a fun moment in your career to be with Prince Naseem Hamed. I bet you've got fond memories of that.
It was, but I've had a lot of fun. For me, I didn't take it. As much as I do take it serious, I also do have a sense of humour about things, and I've always, and I've always risen to the challenge, and sometimes done it with a smile on my face, relishing it. Naz was great. Naz come along, a kid from Yemen. Most people thought he come from Pakistan, but he come from Yemen. And him and Brendan came down to my house, and I'd done a deal with him. And I knew when I met him, I knew I could do something. He weren't with me from the start. He'd had a couple of fights. I think he might have had a couple with. Well, he had a couple with Mickey Duff and a couple with Matchroom, but they didn't do it. Nothing happened with him. So he came with me, and he got it. He knew what I was trying to do, and he was great to work with from that perspective. And then his brothers got involved, and his brother was just a pain in the arse and just screwed it all up.
This is a story you would have seen so many times though in boxing.
Well, it does.
Right?
Sometimes families get involved and families are good. Sometimes they don't. It depends where they're coming from. I don't like to believe or think any different that a member of a family is trying to screw their kids. They want the best for their kids. Me, I'd want the best for my kids, and you expect the same. And sometimes what people are grateful for to start with, and up to the point they get to a stage, then afterwards there becomes a little bit of resentment of maybe some of the people around them, and that happens. And it really does piss you off. But nothing surprises me in boxing at all. Been there, seen there, done it, and I've seen, and I can tell from day one who's going to be the pain in the arse.
But Naz wasn't
90% of the time. Naz was all right, and Brendan, but when the brother got involved, and the whole thing just fell apart. And Naz retired. What was he, 27, 28? He was retired. Yeah. And
he had one fight after Barrera, wasn't it?
Yeah, he had that fight. He had the fight in I think it was London Arena. He came back, and it was sad because he had so much, and he shouldn't have been in with Barrera. He weren't right. He was one of his family. Basically talked him into doing it. And I'm not taking nothing away from Barrera, who, by the way, won the world title with me. But it just didn't happen.
But you had a great crowning moment with him in New York, right? That Kevin Kelly fight.
Kevin Kelly was a great fight. Wales, when he fought Steve Robinson. He was a bloody good fighter, Steve Robinson. He beat nearly everybody. He's another one who shows that you come from a background where you're not, no one done him any favours. He was a bit of a, he done it the hard way, and then he won the title, coming as a last-minute replacement, and won the world title, and came with me, and he had quite a few defences, and then obviously as the business happened and Naz kept winning, they clashed. And
21, wasn't he, Naz, at the time?
He's the youngest ever British world champion.
Yeah, amazing. Listen, and again, you've always had the eye for the talent. I'm going to segue quickly to Moses Itauma, because there's lofty ambitions for him. He's 20 years old. He'll be 21 next month or the month after that as well.
December, yeah.
Have you seen it in his eye? When you get that feeling when you're with a fighter.
He is a special talent. And at his age, he's done better than anybody I can think of. I mean, anyone. And Naz done brilliantly at that. That age. Joe Kawasaki, lots of them. But he is an amazing talent, And he's got a tough fight next fight out. It's not an easy job. That 24th of January up in Manchester. Jermaine's 27-0. He's only lost 2 fights, and they both were on points. Joshua, Dillian, and they were quite a few years ago, and a lot of people felt the Dillian fight was close. So no one's stopped him. So we get some questions answered of Moses on the night.
Yeah, listen, and so many of these fighters have answered questions along the way, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with Moses. I want to talk a little bit about your kind of eye for matchmaking. For me, there's 2 big examples that come to mind in my kind of time watching boxing. Was when Amir Khan took a loss to Bradis Prescott. 3 fights later, he was world champion, and that would have been you guiding him there.
Well, the Bradis Prescott wasn't my fault.
No,
that was his family.
And the coach as well, right? There was a.
Well, he's the coach. They picked him, and this is one of my faults. I said I don't want the fight. I said I can't find it. I couldn't at that stage. I couldn't find any footage. I looked at his record, spoke to somebody who told me what he was. I said, we don't need this. What do we need it for? He's undefeated. No, he's there. The coach said that he'd seen him in the gym and all this stuff, and he's a perfect opponent. And so basically what's happening is the family are taking the coaches, they're picking what the coach says rather than what I said. And I've got to tell you, there's some great trainers, and there's some trainers who are terrible matchmakers. Because you're a great trainer, don't make you a great matchmaker. And anyway, it got to the stage where I had an argument with him. I said, and in the end I thought, well, sod it, get on with it. And at the weigh-in, I knew he was going to get beat. I could just see it, and Amir didn't look right. You could see this is a man, he's in where he's a boy, he's a man, and you could tell this, and I knew what's going to happen. I didn't think it was going to happen in 1 round, but I knew it was going to happen, and that's what happened. And afterwards, we went back to the dressing room afterwards, and I was pissed off. And his dad and a couple of his team, they said, "Oh, what are we going to do now? What are we going to do next?" I said, "Well, if I was you, I'd sack the matchmaker." I said, "No, mind your own business in future and let the people know what they're doing, do what they got to do." And then we he had a couple of wins, and he fought. He went up a weight, and they didn't want to go up the weight. I said, "I'm telling you, you'll beat this fella." And we did a deal where he was getting X amount for the fight. If he won it, he was on a big purse for defending the title. And I said to him, "And if you get beat, I'll pay you the same money." That's how confident I was, and he won the fight.
Yeah, that was Kotelnik, of course.
Yeah, it was a good fight, by the way. He'd done a job on
it. I think he'd beaten Marcus Maidanis. There was a good thing there. So yeah, that was a lesson for you, really. Then, in terms of family telling you, no, we're going to fight this guy, and maybe you should have stood your ground.
And then they went off to America.
More.
Our contracts, we didn't even get in, and I got a bit pissed with that. But they went off to America, and he went to America too soon. A couple more fights here, but anyway, it's irrelevant.
It is done. Tyson Fury's big comeback was a magical time in the last sort of 10, 15 years.
Unbelievable. When we met up and we sat down, and I liked Tyson, and I could see in his eyes that where he was at, and he'd obviously had these terrible problems, personal problems, and the booze and taking stuff he shouldn't be, or dabbling stuff he shouldn't be dabbling in, and the weight. He was a good, I think, 10.5, 11 stone overweight. He was all over the place in some ways, but he found that boxing gave him focus, being in the gym and whatever. So we'd done a deal, and I took him in. I'd already done our deal probably about 6-7 months before with BT, as it was then. And I took him in. I said, I want to go with this, go with this guy. And there was a little bit of, we don't want this. And I said to him, you've done a deal with us. This is where we are. And it was one of the most surreal meetings I've ever had. It was brilliant. And it was fun.
Who was in the room?
There a couple of execs, Andy Hayworth, who's a real good guy. He's no longer there. I think he's at the FA now. Steve Norris, a few of them. And it was hilarious. I mean, I was sitting there thinking, can you imagine these guys have been dealing with the rugby league, sort of rugby union association with, cricket and everything, and here's us here. It's like it was surreal, but it was great, and we got it off. And I told them, I said, we will wind up controlling the heavyweight division. It'll take a few years, and BT over that period of time, they were getting bigger numbers on the big fights than they were on Sky were getting, and we overtook them. We built a really strong stable and made a decision that we would focus on the UK market to start and then build from there. I've already been to the States, as you mentioned earlier, Madison Square Garden, first Brit to run a show there. I launched a Showbox series. Joe Kawasaki, Ricky Hatton, they all fought regularly on Showtime or HBO on a regular basis. I mean, no one had exposure like we were getting them back then. So I'd done all that, being there, and then things moved on, and certainly over the last few years, two of my kids, George and Francis, are now got involved in the business, in the boxing.
You didn't want that initially?
No,
for them,
I didn't.
right?
No, I didn't. I wanted. They all had very good educations, and I didn't. No, I didn't want them in it. And but they were bitten by the bug. They were watching. You think on a Saturday night, what am I doing? I'm at a show. They're watching it on TV. They're boxing nuts, and that's what it is. And George is the CEO now, and Francis is out on his own managing fighters. He manages Moses, Sam Noakes, and some other really good young fighters.
How much involvement do they still come to you for advice, or are they just
Now
fully?
Now and then they're quite. I mean, they're young men, but they've been in the business a long time. They're good at what they do.
You must be proud.
I am proud of them. I'm very, very proud of them. I'm proud of what they do and how they, what they've managed to achieve between them. But it's it's good, and it'll always be in safe hands with George at the helm. He's quite cool, calm, and collected. And Francis, they're different personalities. And Francis is, he's found his role in what he's doing.
Talk to me a little bit more about Tyson, because that initial, when he's 30 stone or whatever, and you must have seen something in his eyes. Other people may not have seen that in his eyes. What is it that you saw that made you think? Yeah,
well, I knew first of all he's a really, really good fighter. That's where he was, and obviously he went off the rails. There was a spark there and the hunger, and everything he said he'd do, he done.
When you know, you know.
I believed in him. I believed in him, and he believed in me. That's when we got it together.
What would you say your best night in boxing's been so far?
Oh, do you know what? I've been blessed with so many. It's very difficult. So many. I look at. I mean, going backwards. I look at Tyson. Those fights with Wilder.
6, 7, 8, 9. Can you continue? You're all over now. Will be now. That surely is going to be the end of the fight.
I look at Daniel Dubois knocking over AJ.
It's over. There's no way back from this, surely. 6, 7, 8. The towel's in. It is over. A dynamic, destructive, dynamite performance.
Go all the way back, the Naz fights.
Down goes Kelly again. Naseem Hamed knocked out Kevin Kelly.
Ricky Hatton winning his world title in his hometown in Manchester against Costas, who's
corner said no more, and Ricky Hatton has done it.
Joe Kawasaki was a phenomenal fighter, undefeated. Great wins against Jeff Lacey, against Bernard Hopkins, who's a bloody good fighter. Beating a really, really good Kessler, really good 54,000 people.
Unification.
Unification. Yeah. And I'll tell you something, he took a lot out of Kessler, as Joe did again against Jeff Lacey. Jeff Lacey was never the same after that fight.
Well, Jeff Lacey was...
And remember, Jeff Lacey was a champion. That was unification. And he was all the fights I'm talking about, all the other guys were favourites. All of them. Not one of the fights I'm talking about were our guys' favourite.
Jeff Lacey was meant to be Mike Tyson reincarnated.
Well, he was.
Right?
He was bloshing everybody out. He was doing the business in style, and all of them. Costa Zoo was number one pound for pound. All of them. Everyone I'm talking about all of them were all big underdogs.
Adds to it though, doesn't it? When you win as the underdog, again, the Tyson Fury story. He wasn't meant to come back and dethrone Deontay Wilder and all of that.
Because well, of course it's good. Especially it's good if they're with us.
Yeah, exactly that. In terms of rivalries with other promoters and all that, is it good for boxing? Bad for boxing?
Yeah, it's good for. Of course it is. I mean, you don't want monopolies, and it is good for boxing. Monopolies are no good. You have a monopoly, public going to suffer, and the boxer's going to suffer because they've got no choices. And I've seen that happen in other sports, and it's not good. It's great to have competition. I've always thrived in it, but I never worry about what somebody else is doing. I always worry about what we're doing. As long as you focus on yourself and what you're doing, and you're good at what you do, you'll always come through. If you start worrying about what someone else is doing, you're not focusing on your own business.
Does it drive you on though, like particularly in this last era, the era that we're in now, the rivalry with Matchroom, with Barry, and then with Eddie as well? It felt like you're trying to sort of outdo each other. That must kind of bring you up even more.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's there's been that, but we've been quite successful. We've had our good moments.
It is a clean sweep for Queensberry. 10-0.
There we go, boys.
Pass these up, man.
I'm going to mention it.
I can see it. It's right behind you. There it is, the 5 versus 5 glove. It's in shot, but a crowning moment, a glorious night.
It was a great moment. For me, it was a fabulous night. I did enjoy that.
How much has the sport changed in terms of accessibility to the public? You touched upon it earlier in terms of used to even not be live in the UK, but so much changes over the years. Pay-per-view, I think you did the first Sky Sports box office. BoxNation was yourself as well. We're now in the kind of DAZN era.
First fights ever on Setanta, given their first champion, their biggest rating for that. ITV, massive boxing, put their first regular boxing slots on, live boxing. We've done all of them. I've been blessed with all that and done them, and it's been an interesting science. But it's changed. Everything's evolved. But at the end of the day, all the stuff outside is evolved. Social media and some of it I could do without. But it is what it is. Newspapers, their power has diminished, their sales have diminished. There are a lot of TV channels now. There was only, as I said, the 2 when I started out. There's lots of TV channels now, and quite a few of them showing boxing, which is good for the fight game. In America, it's just died on its ass. HBO have gone. I mean, when I started, ABC, NBC, terrestrial broadcasters were showing fights. Then you had Showtime. I mean, Showtime and HBO were considered to be like niche companies, and they're big companies now. And it's the same when I went to Sky. Sky had 3.5 million subscribers when I went to them. That's all they had. But you know what? At the end of the day, all people want to see is boxing. They want to see good fights. It's all about the fighters. It's about the fights, because that's what it is. I look at UFC, and people, and they've done a great job with UFC. Great job. But you look at it. If somebody says to you, "I'm going," I don't really know many other than Conor McGregor and maybe that. What's his name? Ngannou. They're the ones I know. I don't. Not being disrespectful. I'm not really into it, so I wouldn't know. But I can't think of any big names, any big names. And you look how many, icons of boxing there've been over the years. And you never get people who say, "I'm going to see the UFC tonight. I'm going to the UFC tonight." They never say, "I'm going to see Queensberry show or a Matchroom show." They say, "I'm going to see the fight." That's the difference between the two sports. It's fighter driven.
And boxing allows the fighter to rise better. Is that kind of what?
Well, I mean, it's the way it is. I mean, the rankings are independent. All these things are, they're all outside of it. And some people may not agree with them, but it's how it's always been.
In terms of BoxNation, that felt like quite a move at the time, maybe ahead of its time.
Well, it was ahead of its time, but at that time, Sky decided they had 4 promoters. They wanted 4 promoters, giving them 8 dates each, and they wanted to give us 800 grand a piece. So that's 100 grand a show. What am I supposed to run for 100 grand? And I thought, this is bullshit. Let's go and do our own thing, and that's what we did. Then they tried to stop us from getting our pay-per-view channel up. That go to Ofcom. We fought hard, and we won the day there and got our channel. Really had to fight hard then. And I go back before that with venues. We went and built our own venue. Built a 12,500 seat. It was the biggest indoor arena in London at the time. What we built.
These barriers that people put up just makes you want it more.
It
Right?
was what it was. But sometimes when you're a pioneer, you get the arrows. You're before your time. But it's been great. BoxNation was really good. I mean, look at all the fights. You was on there. Think all those fights, all the Canelo fights. Mayweather. Everybody fought on there. We were delivering fabulous fights and shows, and it was just a couple of pay-per-views that were going to run, which would have made the difference. And there was a problem with it. And then we got made an offer eventually by BT.
Did you know that would come? Did you?
They were going to buy us. I'll tell you the true story. So the deal was Queensberry were getting dates and they were going to acquire BoxNation. That's what was happening. And it was all going through. Everything was done. They bought us first and then that was the next phase. And then what happened, they had a fraud in Italy with their Italian company, an Italian company that BT owned. And it was a fraud, something to do with their accounts. Big scandal. And their share price halved. And they stopped all acquisitions, and that killed us.
What year?
You got to be in. It was how long we?
So 2012, I think. 2011, late 2011. BoxNation started.
Probably within the sort of 3 or 4 years, 2 years. I can't even remember where. But that's what happened. So that killed us. That killed the BoxNation thing, and obviously we made our decision at that stage. The fights were on BoxNation and BT, if you remember. It was a simultaneous broadcast, and then they wanted them exclusively, and we did the deal. And I was gutted over that, but their share price it's never recovered. Yeah. When we started BoxNation, we had 3 investors, and one of them sent us a confirmation that he'd wired the funds. We all put our money in, and it never arrived. And we never heard from him again. And we sued him for what it's worth, because we had to go through the motions to do that, and we won the case. But the very first show, I shouldn't have run it, because the money didn't come in. But we thought that everybody's trained. I don't want to delay it. We could have pushed it back while we were looking for other monies. And that's me, stupid sometimes I am. But
would you do it again?
No, because you don't get any gratitude. And a couple of fighters on there, it took us a little while to pay them. They got paid like a month later than they should have done, but they got paid, and we were millions out because the money didn't come in. But we honoured it and paid everyone, and paid them good money and given them great opportunities. But that's what it was.
Well, some of that,
and one of the fighters, one fighter, Enzo McAnally, was an absolute star.
I've heard you speak well about him before.
Absolute star, Enzo. Proper bloke.
I think you said if you could go for a drink with anyone, it'd be Enzo.
Yeah, but because of how he was. I mean, he knew what was what, and but I should never. And I look back at it, and I look back at it with a lot of regret.
So is that you leading with your heart and not your head at times?
Well, it is. I mean, I remember when Bob Arum and Matchmaking were doing a show in Hong Kong, I think Herbie Hyde was on there, and the money never got put in. Now, would you run it or not? They didn't run it. They cancelled it, and no one got any money. But that was it. Now, if I'd have done that, no one could have screamed. That's when the money's not there. What do you want me to do?
But you did. and everyone was happy, all right?
Well, they got... I mean, if you had to wait for the money that you were getting paid, you had to wait a couple of weeks longer. I mean, it weren't the end of the world. And obviously we're good for it with with the boxing board of control and everything, because that was what it is. But and there was a lot of shit was put around at the time and whatever, but it was all part of life and getting on with it.
You've had so many barriers, right? Was there ever any moment where you thought,
No,
really?
you never thought.
So many slaps across
A
face.
couple of times with with fights, you think, oh, I'm not going to invest in someone again like that.
But I'm talking about you walking away from the sport. It's never been a consideration. Because there must have been so many times where there was a door where you just, oh, come on.
Yeah, but that's life. If you don't have bad times, you can't appreciate good times. So you get on with it.
What keeps the passion alive, Frank?
Okay, because I enjoy it. I enjoy spotting young talent or young talent coming with us that we can, we can invest in and bring them through. And we're good at doing that. We've done it time and time. We do it better than anybody. And I'm not being big-headed about it. We do it better than anybody. Develop them. And I'm not talking about Olympians. And I'm talking about kids you never, no one may not have heard of. Maybe in the trade, a couple of people, but good young fighters, and bring them through.
That seems to always be something that sets Queensberry apart, that sets you apart, is that it's not necessarily the Olympians, the GB
No,
guys.
because some of those kids, you think they didn't get picked for the GB squad because somebody prefers or likes somebody more than they like him, and they get left out. I mean, that can happen. There are people trained to go to the Olympics and suddenly don't get picked. 4 years, they could have turned pro earlier. That's why I have no problem turning, Naz was a young pro. Ricky Hatton turned pro early. So did Amir. Lots of guys. So did Daniel Dubois. So was Moses. That Moses and Daniel Dubois never even had a senior fight.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, Frank, how do you want to be remembered when this sort of 45 years time from now? What do you think people will be saying about Frank?
God knows I won't be here to know about it, will I? So it don't really matter, does it?
You probably won't be.
Listen, whatever it is, it's like Eric. You're here today, you're gone tomorrow. I mean, all I know is time flies quick, and I hope the next few years don't go as fast.
Been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure, man.
And
Cheers.
congratulations on 45/48 years.
Thank you.
Yeah, all right.